Okay, we're going to talk about doing a zine project with senior citizens. So I'm Nicole, and the way I started doing this is I was the outreach coordinator for a place called the Independent Publishing Resource Center in Portland, Oregon. And I started teaching zine workshops and comics workshops to at-risk youth. So youth that had basically been like kicked out of every other high school, were at the end of the road high school, or youth experiencing homelessness, and different sections of adults that just had different, for whatever reasons, weren't gelling with mainstream society. I was like, people would be like, oh, do this zine workshop. And I was like, okay, so just different populations. But the thing I found when we went to PAIR, which is a nonprofit that works with arts and youth experiencing homelessness, is they were like, you need to come for at least 6 months. If you need to, like, if you want to get, because basically I would go to these places, give people a zine workshop, and then help them make a zine, either by us working together every time I was there, or helping them make their own issues. So either me making a collection or them making their own issues. But the people that worked in these different nonprofits with different populations were like, yeah, you have to, especially like with youth that are living on the streets and have a lot of other priorities. It was like, you need to gain people's trust if you want anything of value. If you want this to actually be a thing that they actually care about and is reflective of their experience, and not just them being like, sure, here's some stranger. No one's going to pour their heart out in a poem if they met you 1 week ago and that's it. And then you're going to go take their stuff and like exploit them by being like, look at this. So I was like, okay, 6 months. And so we would go every week for 6 months and sit there. And with the youth that I was working with, some of them I would see them once, some of them never again, but we would continue to go for 6 months and then make this zine. And then somebody from the Marie Smith Center, which is a senior center in North Portland that was run by Volunteers of America, RIP, it's not there anymore, or it is. There's some scandalous reason why it's okay. Oh, you're muted.
Pardon me. Yeah, Volunteers of America still exists, but the Marie Smith Center, RIP.
So there was like a new activities coordinator, and he said, would you come to this? It was like an adult day center, which basically was a place where different senior citizens and adults with developmental disabilities would come. They either like, maybe they lived with their children and the children needed respite, so they would bring them there, or they would get, a lot of people were institutionalized, meaning like they would come on a bus that would like pick them up at the place where they all lived, bring them here for the day. Some of them were in adult foster care. And this was a place for people to socialize, get some of their medical needs checked out, and meet with social workers, but also like play bingo, do aerobics, eat lunch. And so Nathan was like, is that accurate, Lisa, to the description of the center? Okay, great. And it was started by a neighborhood activist, but Lisa can get into that if it fits in. But he said, do you want to come to this adult day center and do your zine workshop? And I said, yes. And my friend Mark had been doing the homeless youth, or the youth experiencing homelessness project at PAIR with me. And I was like, Mark, do you want to come to this project? We called it Oldies, respectfully. We called it the Oldies. But I was like, do you want to come to this project with these senior citizens with me? It'll be 6 months. Can you commit to 6 months? And he was like, yes. So every Friday we showed up, and we ended up staying for 10 years. More or less every week, one or the other of us, more or less. But so we started showing up, and basically there's a lot of people there that were not bubbling over with stories in the way that was legible for this zine project, or we're not like wanting to talk to some like random hipsters, like 28-year-olds. So the people who worked there chose like, here's the chattiest people. Here's like a clique, like a group of people. Here's somebody who really likes talking about their life story. Here's someone with an interesting life story. These are all people that will be willing to talk to strangers and interested in expressing themselves. And so they would wheel them over or bring them over when it was time for zine group. And also these people had signed waivers that said that the Marie Smith Center could use their photographs or their testimony. And that was important too, because there's some people whose families maybe didn't want to blow up their spot. So he brought these people over, and I thought I was going to like So we always brought examples of comics and zines that were appropriate, just meaning like not horribly offensive. It's okay. People can read like bad words and stuff, but just things that weren't, just like Christian people there. It's just like, I'm not here to blow anyone's mind. Bring them some satanic literature or something necessarily. But I realized pretty quickly that they weren't gonna want to do the thing that I had done before. So, and this is the kind of like, I don't know if I'm like making it too broad by saying like no, I'm trying to like get out of like the colonizer mindset of nonprofit sort of outreach, where instead of me going to them being like, you're going to do this project like this, I had to actually stop and assess the needs of the community that we were going into and be like, okay, do they want us here? If so, what do they want from us? And what they wanted is they wanted us to keep coming back. They wanted to be our friends. They were fine with like seeing these weird booklets we brought, getting little drawing work exercises, talking about their lives, and then having their lives reflected back. Like we'd be like, look, I drew this picture of you. Look here, I made a zine that tells everyone all the good that you did in your life that you told us about. Like you going on tour with, I don't know, like James Brown, or like you, whatever. Like that was what they wanted. They didn't want to make their own zines. They weren't like, just like beg, oh, please, I need someone to bring self-publishing into my life, was not the thing. But we did just show up and loyally take notes and interview people about their lives. And then when we published that, they were really happy to have that and really proud. And they could share it with their families and communities and say, look at this little book. I'm in this book. Those weirdos made this little book. And also this community, I mean, people were on different different memory care, different places on that scale. Some people couldn't read or write for like many reasons. And so it just wasn't, it's just like a lot of them didn't have an interest in publishing their own zines. Certainly different communities might have different needs, but that was this community. And so we just stayed. And so my hot tips were talk loud and clear, don't without patronizing anybody, and don't crush their arthritic hands. If you go to shake somebody's hand, you got to be gentle with that hand. And the tone that we started with was respectful. When we met somebody new, because if you read the zine, it's us joking with them a lot, but that was like a couple years down the line. Like when we started, we were like, oh, hello, how long have you lived here? What were your jobs? Do you have any kids? And then we could ask them some general questions, but we weren't like, what do you say if someone farts in an elevator? Like that came a lot later. And so I just wouldn't get overly familiar with people that are maybe a little older than you and want respect as part of their friendship. So I would say, and also, so we took notes every single day. So I'd say somehow categorize your notes. Maybe you do it for a month, you look at your notes, you write at the top what topics were in there. Biography, jobs, dates, whatever. Have a lot of patience. Some days nobody would come to zine group, or one person would come, or they would ask to leave. That was the worst, when people asked to leave because they were in a wheelchair or had been taken out of their walker, and they would call an aide and be like, get me out of here. Be persistent, and like, just like, you're just there, see what happens. You're just like acceptance, being in the moment, and then have a party and like work with the organization to celebrate the things that are happening. Like if you make a zine, make a little party, have a release party there with them. You're not going to invite all your friends, but their friends are going to be there, and they'll be happy to see that. Okay, I think that's pretty much it. Also, our only budget, we didn't get paid for this ever, but our budget was just for printing. We ended up doing a Kickstarter. After making several zines, we ended up doing a Kickstarter so that we could compile those zines into a book. And I think we got one grant to put the book together. And that was pretty much it. This is definitely something that's fundable. Like the nonprofit we were working with initially got funding for this project that we never saw. But I did have a funder approach me at some point, and they were so proud to have funded it, which is how I found out that funding had gone through.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, but it's like, I don't know how to express how lovely it was, no matter what kind of dumb drama was going on in my life, to get to show up to this place every Friday and have this team of friends. Because they just became my friend. Instead of being like this, like, interview subjects. I'm an anthropologist. It was like, no, these are just your friends. And then also I had to be very discerning. This is one thing, be very discerning about volunteers, because everybody wants to pretend like they want to go hang out with old people, but they don't have follow through. And it really hurt the participants' feelings.
Mhm.
People would say things like, why do they even come? Why do they even show up, introduce themselves? They're not going to come back.
Mhm.
And they would like remember these people forever. Like I would be dating somebody who'd be like, I want to come see senior citizens. And like years later, Miss B would be like, give this seed of a cotton plant to that child that came 3 years ago that mentioned growing cotton in the South. And I like, people didn't forget, but so I could tell like flaky people. I would really try to weed them out. But all that said, I thought Mark was a flaky person. And then I brought him in and he flourished and shined. And like at certain points, he was wearing the bib alongside everybody, eating lunch. I liked him a lot. Okay, the end. Lisa.
That was great. Um, yeah, so I don't remember how far in were you in 2012?
I think we started in, I don't know, maybe 5 years.
Well, in 2012, I did an internship while getting my bachelor's in social work at the Marie Smith Center, which had nothing to do with the zine crew, but I weaseled my way in rapidly and just like slowly kept inching a chair closer and closer, and got the opportunity to just be part of the shenanigans for a long time. I don't have like any skills when it comes to drawing, and so what I ended up doing was just kind of building like really there was one person in particular who didn't really want to sit with the zine group necessarily, and she was really severely hard of hearing but masked a lot, so like would hide it really well and just kind of like harumph at you. And anyways, I built a really strong relationship with that person and ended up cataloging a lot of what she had to say in
Yeah.
her, yeah, in her day-to-day at the center. um and then when I finished my internship, uh Mark and Nicole asked if I wanted to help with the project of transitioning it into the book, anthology book. And I absolutely did, so I got to support that a little bit, and then I think for years afterwards would still just come on Fridays when I could and be a part of things. Eventually I got my MSW, and then I ended up running the Marie Smith Center for the next 6 years after that. Which
Nice.
I will say it is a lot more fun to be a volunteer than it is to be a person in charge of a center. So yeah, stick with volunteering. But yeah, so got to do that for then another 6 years, and then the center closed, and now I'm working at what used to be called the Hollywood Senior Center here in Portland, and it is like a true senior center, which I think is interesting to reflect on the differences a little bit. And I don't know, Jamie, where are you at?
I'm in Dallas, Pennsylvania.
Okay. Do you have a spot like identified that you're hoping to go to?
So there are 3 centers within like a 2-minute drive of myself. So I think I probably will do, there's one connected to the local college. I think that's what I kind of have my sights set on. I mean,
Nice.
maybe all 3, but I don't know what I have capacity for at this point.
Totally. Yeah, I think something that I've learned about this space versus the Marie Smith Center is that there's a lot less gatekeeping that happens at a senior center, because this is a place that people are choosing to come to. There's no cost associated. People are not, I mean, there's like some light enrollment and we know people well. And we have like a gym sign-in system where they have a little key card and sign in for the day and things like that. But otherwise, it's a lot more informal, which I think lends itself well to a project like this. I think Nicole and Mark did a lot of work to sidestep a lot of like kind of stringent gatekeeping and policy type stuff. I think there were definitely people that had not signed waivers that were in the zine group, and there were challenges to try to like, I think there was pressure from the organization to exclude them, but then obviously Nicole and Mark were not going to like not talk to people who wanted to participate. And because a lot of folks at that center had other people that were making decisions for them, so like power of attorney, family members typically, they weren't necessarily the ones who were consenting. And so that got tricky, which I think Tell It Like It Tiz did a beautiful job of kind of pushing back on some of those things and really making it a space for people who wanted to be a part of it. But I see where a center that's more like a true senior center where people are dropping in for activities and maybe making a little bit more choice would have some ease that the adult day center did not. Yeah, I think like Nicole's hot tips were really on the money. I think like, yeah, just building trust, huge, as Nicole mentioned, like really respecting that you're a guest in this space. If you're going to a senior center or an adult day center, the space is not for you. You're a visitor, you're on their turf. And so recognizing that. And I think the best way to build trust is consistency. And I think, like Nicole said, both Nicole and Mark toured and were gone a lot, and they did such a good job of like making sure that the other person was still going to be there, that the folks knew what was going on in their lives so that they could be excited. I feel like Nicole, you sent a lot of postcards and you would always come back from whatever you were doing and really like share yourself and your story with them. I think that's a really important piece too. Coming from a social work background, we're taught so much like boundaries means not telling your stuff, but I think a huge piece of relationship building and trust building was that the elders wanted to know us. They wanted to know our stories. They wanted to know what was going on in our lives and make fun of us and give us really misguided advice and all that sort of stuff was like, I think why the project was so successful. So not having that wall up, within reason, of course, boundaries are there for a reason. You're not going to like sit and cry all your troubles away to someone who's like not meeting their food needs every day. Like, there's a balance there, but I think definitely inviting people into your life is really important. I think remembering that old people are adults is really one of the most important things. Nicole mentioned not infantilizing people through like the way you're meeting them where they're at communication wise. And I think also just in general, like people can choose what they want to be a part of or what they don't. Yeah, I have like a memory of calling bingo and like maybe making a really talking about showing a movie or something and being like, oh, it's probably too inappropriate, and then realizing like, no, this is like truly the most mature people get. We're talking about 80 plus. Like this is so trusting that people are going to participate in what they want to participate in. I think something that I always found really striking about Tell It Like It is that people are not taking pictures of elders. Like at that stage of life, it is very rare that people are having their photograph taken. And so I think there's a lot of beauty and potential in like, you're capturing their stories, you're capturing their past. And that was a huge part of the project, was like hearing people's past and cataloging those stories, having an oral history lens sort of thing, but also remembering that this is a really beautiful opportunity to capture people's present. The relationships that happened at the Marie Smith Center, those were like the core friendships in most of these people's lives. And so, yeah, there was such a pride in like being able to show drawings. Okay. Yeah, so like damn it, Nicole. Yeah, this is a really important place to us for a really long time. And yeah, this is like so wonderful to get to pass this on, but also really heartbreaking.
Mm.
But yeah, so I think like having that opportunity to like capture what's going on and what's important to people now is really beautiful, because it just doesn't happen for older adults. That was something really consistent, like just in other events we would do towards the end of the lifespan of the Marie Smith Center. We had someone who was like throwing a lot of parties, and we would do photo booths and take like Polaroids of people, and people would always be like, please, can I have that? Like, I don't have any pictures of me now. So I think that's a really big gift that you can offer to folks. Another tough thing is that old people die. And so I would just say to be aware for yourself that that is also a big piece of the work. And Nicole, you probably really resonate with this, but like a lot of times people die and we don't know, or we don't know why, we don't know when, or people move, they move into care and we don't get to hear. So I think preparing your heart for like the non-closure and heartbreak that comes with like not getting to say goodbye to people, and not necessarily knowing like what has happened for them is really a hard piece. But also, you know, you have this beautiful work and people's stories to like be an offering of remembrance. Like Georgia, who we talked about earlier, when I started my job, she died in my first year in my role, and I was really, really, really close with her. I ended up spending most of that year like bedside with her, which questionable boundaries again, but it was a really important lesson for me. And I'm still so grateful for like the artwork and the images I have and the stories of Georgia to like remember, because she was a really important part of my life. So yeah, prepare your heart for that. You know, get support, tell people in your life about this project and that you're building these meaningful relationships. Because if you don't have folks to talk to, and people aren't going to get it, right? Like, I mean, we'll get it. You could reach out to us. Like, but I think I struggled to find people in my life who really understood what it meant to be building these like strange, beautiful, wonderful connections with folks towards the end of their lives. I think those are the main things that kind of, I was going to say, I think the thing I always brag about with Tell It Like It Is was that while I can see that coming to a center like this, where people are a little bit potentially earlier in their aging journey, maybe have a bit more cognition stuff. I think one of the things that was incredible about Tell It Like It Is that we didn't fact check people. So we heard some wild tales, and who knows what was true, who knows what wasn't true, you know. But I feel like the format of a zine, the format of Tell It Like It Is was that we just like held people's stories no matter what they were. We really didn't like call people out or challenge them, which I think as these folks are navigating memory loss, brain changes, things like that, everyone is fact checking them all the time. And so for us to get to create a space that was like, no, you just kind of get to tell your story no matter what that story is, and we're going to say that it's important enough to write it down, was like incredibly, incredibly powerful. And so that's always something like when I talk about that project that I really brag about, because that was a beautiful thing. And I do want to say that like whether you're at an adult day center that's maybe a little bit more care heavy, potentially more folks who are in later stages of cognitive changes, when you're at a senior center as well, you know, that stuff's going to come up too. One more thing. I did think of one more thing. If you're able to be a really consistent presence in folks' lives, like if this is something that works and that you do for a while, you're going to be a really important and powerful advocate in somebody's life, potentially. I think that we really got to know people on such an intimate level that when things fell off, when things were changing, when we were worried, like we got to be a voice in there. You know, we got to like say, hey, something doesn't feel right, or kind of, yeah. So I think just remember that that's another extra layer that's like a really beautiful piece of work like this. So
Well, like I remember, you know, like Miss B had a long saga about somebody, somehow her electricity bill was like out of control. Like either somebody in her building was messing with it and like put it like plugging into her apartment, or the bill, like she was having a hard time with it was just a thing where it was like, as younger people, you know, I'm sure she's telling her friends who are also 80 years old and living in adult foster care, and they're like, bummer. We were a little younger and had a little more stamina for like battling with electric companies, and I don't know if it's helpful, but I remember, I don't know, just being able to be there or be like, no, that doesn't seem right.
Totally.
No, the going rate for electricity is not $200 a month for a studio or 1-bedroom apartment.
Yeah, for sure.
I was gonna, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say there are so many people, you know, I've struggled a little bit to find my like professional place in social work, because working with elders is typically through the lens of like social workers who work with elders often are coming from like a medical vantage point, which is not really my interest. I'm like, I want to see the full person, not like a medical problem. And so there are a lot of people who are in older adults' lives, maybe, or maybe there's nobody. I mean, you know, it's a broad range, but yeah, you probably have more time. Not to say that you're like a social worker, you know, I'm not saying like take that on, but just yeah, you're gonna really get to know someone in a way that someone with a caseload of 57 people is not gonna have. Because that was true for the Marie Smith Center. Like they had a medical social worker who spent, you know, every 6 months doing an evaluation and then responding to like urgent needs, but otherwise didn't really get to spend any time with those folks.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And we could, I mean, I don't remember specifics, but I remember different times when I was able to talk to like you, Lisa, or whoever was in charge at that time, be like, hey, I was talking to so-and-so and they mentioned this. I just wanted you to know.
Yep, totally.
And it wasn't that hard. It was just reporting on something that felt clear as day, like, oh, this is different, or they mentioned this. I don't know if they mentioned this to you because I caught it in conversation. I will say for me, the hardest part was less people dying and more people getting moved against their will. That was really hard. Like imagining your friends in isolation was really hard. Because like I told you, we had a clique. And then like, somebody in the clique, like the thing is like people were in, and this is very specific to the day center, or maybe it's not, but like one person was in a particular kind of institutional housing that could only take care of people up to a certain medical point. And so she got injured one day through what I think was negligence. And then all of a sudden her injuries were too much for that place anymore. So she got moved out of this place where she lived to a nursing home and couldn't come to the Marie Smith Center anymore. And like was totally cut off from everybody, because it's not like everybody has an iPhone or what. And that was really that mystery, that kind of thing you're talking about, the non-closure, or like somebody's kid decided that they wanted their mom to be closer. So they moved her to Florida from Oregon. And she was like, I don't want to go. And we were like, we don't want you to go. And then that was it. And because of the boundaries of the space, it's not like I can just like text her or something. That's hard. Other things you should know, you may have to get fingerprinted and background checked. Yeah, it's nice if you can like hear about elder abuse to tell somebody else and be like, hey, heard this thing happening. And if you haven't yet, look at and buy as many copies as you can of the zine, The Duplex Planet, which is what I was copying when we started this project. Basically, this guy who was a zinester in the 80s worked at a place called the Duplex Nursing Home. And he made the Duplex Planet as almost like their little magazine for the nursing home, where he would interview the people who lived there and talk about their lives. And there's comic issues too, where he would get cartoonists to come and, you know, adapt somebody's life story into a comic, but a lot of it was just typed and written. And then he got to have like memorial issues for certain people. And we would sometimes, I mean, we would actually just steal with attribution, but we would just steal like questionnaires from the duplex planet, just like questions you like, who's Frankenstein? And people would be like, who is like, just like, do you remember your first kiss? Who did you, just different stuff like that.
Cool.
And also this ended up being a selling point for the Marie Smith Center.
Mhm.
Like it wasn't just us going in, because it was us being like these weirdos that would come in and sit down in a corner and be like, God, why do they have to be so loud doing exercise? You know, oh, but they're starting bingo early. Wow, how are we supposed to compete? Just, you know, you're never going to compete with bingo.
Never.
You're just not. It doesn't matter how much they like you. Once the cards come out, you're out. You might be playing bingo with it, but you're not talking over the bingo caller. That's just like not there. That's not going to happen.
Mhm.
But I was going to say, like, at a certain point, the directors of the Marie Smith Center would use the zine as a selling point when they were talking about the different activities they had.
Mhm.
They'd be like, and we have the zine group. And then people would sometimes also try to strong arm us into having their relatives in the zine.
Mhm.
Had to have boundaries. But sometimes their relative would be like, not interested in talking to us.
Mhm.
Just not on that wavelength, not interested, and their kids would come visit them, be like, well, how come my dad's not in the zine? He has a very interesting life. And I'd be like, we try to talk to your dad and he is not interested. But that's it. What are your questions?
Here's one. So what's the difference between a senior center and like a nursing home? I guess that's not something that I'm aware of. I'm realizing.
Totally. I'll take this if that's okay, Nicole.
Okay. I'm like,
Okay, so so there are many levels of care where folks live. And so that would be like a residential care facility, assisted living, independent living, which is like apartments where you're not really receiving care, but it's in a community-based setting. A nursing home is typically where folks go if their needs are really high, and particularly when they're like in transition. So if they've been hospitalized for something and need to go there for care. There's memory care facilities, which is for folks specifically who have dementia, Alzheimer's, need some like secure facility. There's adult foster homes, which is what Nicole was referencing. A lot of our folks lived in those. Those are small home in like house environments where typically it varies by state. But in Oregon, I think you can only have 4 residents. It might also be per like how much staffing you have. So that's like the residential facilities. And then a senior center, so like here where I'm at, the senior center is a place that it's like drop in, it's open specific hours, but typically people can come like whenever in those hours. It's usually a community space. Obviously COVID has changed some things, but right now we're open. We have things like vaccine clinics. We had a storytelling group today. We had Zumba yesterday. We'll have chair yoga on Monday. You know, like there's a lot of activities. They're usually free. People are dropping in. We serve hundreds of people. The Marie Smith Center, which is where we were at, is an adult day. We called it adult day center, but they're sometimes just straight up called adult daycares. And those are typically respite, like Nicole was saying, kind of daytime respite opportunities for working caregivers, usually folks who have higher care needs. So like some people can't come to the senior center because they need help in the bathroom, but they can go to an adult day center because there's nursing assistants on staff. And so that's kind of the big difference. At the Marie Smith Center, there were some people who could just leave if they wanted to, but for the most part, folks are not able to come and go. And often people don't want to be there. It's like a family need or, part of their care plan. Does that help?
Yeah, that helps. Would you suggest like a senior center over like a nursing home. I know I heard something, you were talking about like um there being more gatekeeping at certain
Yeah,
places.
I could see how like the zine group in this space that I'm at now in the senior center, I could see how easy it would be to fill the room with people. Like folks would be interested, they would make that choice for themselves. They're really looking for like a consistent thing to do. You might have like too much here. I will speak for this center here. I think if you offered it here in Portland, Oregon, you'd have to cap it. There would be too many people. The storytelling group that we have, so someone who's basically helping people craft like 5-minute stories from there, it's like they have 20 plus people. They're bursting out of the room. So I think there's a lot of desire at a space like that. I also think that like in a nursing home or an adult day center type setting, people have a lot more need for connection. So I don't want to say that either place has more need than the other, but I do think that there's like a really strong need in places like that. There's a lot of isolation, a lot of loneliness. People are choosing to come here, which means they're probably doing other stuff also. So I think there's pluses and minuses. I think in a residential facility, I could see it being really challenging to kind of get through some of that gatekeeping type stuff because you're not only in a space, but you're where people are kind of protected, but also you're in their home, in a facility. So I think that could be challenging, but everywhere has activity coordinators. So those are the people you're going to want to connect with and kind of get your elevator pitch going for like what you're hoping to accomplish. And then I think when you talk to those people, you will feel who wants it and who doesn't, like if you're getting a lot of resistance, maybe that's not the spot for you. So
I see.
I was gonna say, I recommend getting a partner for this because, and I know I'm being a hard ass about like somebody's got to be able to commit to the rest of their life coming every day, but it's really helpful because there is something like when people are talking to you and you're just writing that they're like a little less connected or in the moment because they're aware. So there were a lot of times where Mark would be chatting with somebody and then I would be just writing down the things that they were saying, or I would be drawing them or some other people there. And it was also helpful because they could try to play us off each other. Some people liked Mark more than they liked me. I don't know if there was anything that was vice versa. They had a whole fun rom-com idea in their heads of what might happen between me and Mark. But it was helpful to have more than one person. So one person could be the note taker. Like, sure, you're chatting with people too, but there might be a moment where one of you just wants to get engrossed in the conversation and go deeper and have the other person taking notes or sketching or whatever. It really is a life drawing situation. Like it really is like you're sitting there and you're just, like I showed you some of the drawings. Lisa, I have the giant folder here, but I mean, sometimes you're just like okay, like here's what's happening here today. Like someone's beret is over their face, or like someone has their coat on backwards over their head because they're trying to take a nap in a public space. Or like somebody's wearing like an incredible outfit. And so you're just like, okay, here's my live drawing of this thing.
I know that person and that outfit.
I was trying to describe that she was real badass.
Somebody was like giving me a hard time at the center, or I was telling a story maybe about having somebody giving me a hard time, and she stood up, threw her chair to the ground and said, I will kick their ass. Like, tell me who it is right now. Yeah.
Wow.
There are also, something else to think about too is there's also, I don't know if this is true for where you are, but like in Portland, we have a like LGBTQ specific senior group. So there are a lot of like affinity groups for elders that you could probably track down if there was like a certain population you were hoping to connect with. I I will say that's another piece, like being a queer person and being in relationship with elders is a wild ride. With lots of highs and lows. And so that's just something too, you know, it can be tough, it can be super beautiful, it can be real healing, you know, but it's, you know, it's an experience for sure.
Yeah, I didn't think about that.
I I was not that forthcoming about the gender of people I was dating with them, because that felt like a weird boundary for me, because there was a lot of Christianity that felt kind of like of the kind I grew up with, that made me afraid to like get into that with them. And that's a regret I have. I mean, there would be times where I would make comments. I'd be like, I don't really date men. But and sometimes they would be like, oh, you know, and sometimes they just wouldn't. And they'd be like, so you and Mark? And I'd be like, no, not me and
Still
Mark.
no. Still
Yeah.
no.
Still no.
Well, because it was just like, what did I decide I wanted to keep private and what didn't I? And it was just a weird time too. I was like working with kids in a way where like once like a video of me giving advice about gay dating went viral amongst these kids and I got fired. And so I was living with a lot of like, I'm like a like gross, sketchy gay person trying to be in these wholesome environments. I can't let them know that. I'll get fired from my volunteer job. Or like, I don't know. I didn't want to do that. It was too hard at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think we both have like the privilege of being able to choose whether to disclose that or not. And I will say that in my like, so I spent 10 years at that center from like internship to the center is closed and I locked the door for the last time. And I went through various stages of like coming out or not. And my partner and I, who actually got married at the Hollywood Senior Center where I'm at right now,
What?
we ended up like bringing our flowers to the Marie Smith Center, and so then one of my coworkers like outed me to everyone. And it was like quite an experience, but I think like I agree with Nicole. I mean, I regret not inviting Mama B to my wedding. Like that is one of my biggest regrets. And like we had one of our most, yeah, I had like an incredibly healing moment with her because she is like super Christian and I was like wounded from my family of origin. And anyways, we had this like absolutely incredible moment where she was like, that's not the God I believe in. Like, if you're happy, like the God I believe in is happy. And like, I don't know, this incredible, incredible moment. And she was just mad at me because I didn't invite her to the wedding. I thought she was being homophobic, but she was just like, how dare you get married and not include me? So yeah, it's a roller coaster. And I think, you know, yeah, it's an opportunity. And yeah.
Cool. I'm wondering what kind of like drawing exercises that you did with them, and if it was more like interviews and drawing them rather than having them draw.
Well, it was mostly interviews, but there were people that either like Beverly was the name of somebody who they introduced her to us and were like, oh yeah, or like she loved sketching. She had a hard time hearing. Her hearing aid broke at some point and it just didn't really get fixed. And so she would always be like, what? And she just actually liked getting into her own zone. So I would always bring a lot of comics and zines and things that I thought they might like looking through, like a little bub calendar, internet cats calendar, stuff like that they could just look through and enjoy. And maybe stuff they wouldn't come across in their day-to-day life. And so she would just choose a picture and I would just give her the supplies and she would just be in her own world drawing the whole time. But some other people, and people would ask, like they would see me draw, like, I wish I could draw. And I'd be like, you can draw here. And we would draw something very slow together. So like, think about like Ivan Brunet style, you know, drawing exercises, or like just very simple of like, what do you want to draw? And just making it as simple as I would for anyone who's new to drawing. And then like
Yeah.
Miss B would like slowly copy the thing I drew. Or like I would even draw a self-portrait or a picture of that person and then be like, here, now you can draw it. But just think about like a step by step, like, okay, here's a circle. And then you have to be prepared for every person on earth to be like, I can't draw, so it doesn't look like, it's okay, draw the letter O. It'll be okay. It doesn't have to be perfect. And just like think about like step by step drawing books from when you were a kid and just do it like step by step. And then see, you know, then maybe someone will be like running laps around you. Like, okay, well,
Yeah.
but for me, like, because there were some people that were just very, 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 very new to drawing.
Was the waiver something that the center like required? So was that something that they kind of provided?
I don't know.
It was, yeah. So it was through the nonprofit. And I think that if you were at like if you were at a senior center, I don't think that they would have a waiver. Yeah, we certainly don't here.
Well, because like Lisa was saying, a lot of these people had other people in charge of their decisions. And so it was important for those people to feel like their relatives weren't being like exploited
Mhm.
in any way.
Yeah. And I do think that's something to be aware of too, is that like obviously elders get targeted a lot for scams. So there is just like a general sense of distrust from a lot of people. And I think, yeah, again, like building that trust, building that consistency, being really transparent about your intentions and like where you're hoping the project will go, I think will calm people.
So probably like if I were to, you know, make contact with a senior center or with like a nursing home or like a facility, a residential facility or something, like if I were to tell them like once a week for 6 months, like that's probably a good place to start in terms of like that consistency.
Oh yeah. And then you could say like, you know, if this is true for you, my goal would be to make a little publication, you know, like a small magazine. Also
Yeah.
that, you know, that I could give to the participants and I could give you some copies for the center. And yeah. Or, I mean, depending on the population, if they want to make their own zines, great. Or you could make an anthology of their work if it ends up that they all want to make, maybe they don't want to make a 60-page zine, but maybe they want to make a few pages to put in a collective thing.
Yeah, because I was trying to think of like what kind of like creative goals I could come up with, you know, for them. And what is like a feasible expectation for that? Because like when I've done workshops in the past, it's like, I mean, I think it's part of my personality. I probably will have to like let go a little bit, but part of my personality is like when I go in, I'm like, all right, structure.
Oh yeah,
need
you're
structure.
You're gonna have to let go of that.
This is like when I feed my tortoise and I have this like beautiful like mountain of lettuce with sprinkles on top and she just steps on it and just like, yeah, she like stomps out, like grinds it into the dirt. I'm like, all right, good. Like that's like your plans. Your plans of you go, okay, we're gonna spend 15 minutes on this and this. It's just like,
No.
like we're gonna talk about Jesus. Or we're gonna talk about the time I was on the Tyra Banks show.
We're gonna talk about that every week for the next 10 years.
Oh, and sorry, I know this isn't helping with your plan making, but I've just remembered two things. One, some people have a story on a loop. Like they just have like one tape, that's the story, and they might tell you the same story multiple times, and that's okay. And I don't, but it's never a thing where I'm like, you already told me this. It's like, oh, James Brown, really? You just write it down. And then another thing is, I don't remember the other thing is, but I think that was an important, the thing that you mentioned, Lisa, about not questioning, like not correcting people.
Yeah.
Not correcting people, not being like, I thought you said your daughter was dead. And also trying to keep your ears abreast for things that feel like soft spots. Like if one time someone says my daughter's dead and then you hear them mention their daughter a different time, just letting it be.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if I were you, if I personally was going, if I was me and I was going to a senior center wherever, I would say to the activities coordinator, hey, I'm basing this off of these projects, Duplex Planet, Tell It Like It Tiz, where, different people, different artists went into these populations and used zines as a vehicle to tell their stories. And I would like to come in and do a zine workshop with your seniors. And I guess I would let the seniors who show up inform whether that's more you doing interviews or them doing something else.
Doing something. Yeah. Cool.
I mean, we always would bring like supplies and stuff. I personally hate collages in workshops, and that's my own toxic trait. I just don't. It's not interesting to me to look through like a thing of collages. And I feel like sometimes people will defer to that in a zine workshop. And so then it's just like nobody gets to actually like show their handwriting or show their drawing or like say anything. They're just like, these two eyes kind of match. And then they're with the small body. But we did bring supplies. Like we would bring like clip art sometimes, or just like straight up, we would go and we would just mooch copy paper off the front desk person. You could bring your own. But we would bring a bunch of Sharpie pens and then copy paper. And just if people wanted to doodle or write or draw, they could do that. But the supplies didn't have to be that intense because also not a lot of people wanted to use them, just us. But it was important for us to have a lot of these pieces of paper because you are surprised at how fast, you get through a piece of paper just writing down one interaction.
Yeah. Okay.
Lisa, do you remember in the book, I don't think you were there, but in the book, there was like some guy who was there for one day. He was telling us how when he was a baby, he was in a hurricane and he was holding onto a lamppost and his body was like waving like a flag. And he was like 2 years old holding a lamppost.
Whoa.
It was incredible.
Don't remember that, but that's incredible.
Yeah.
He just like came in one day, left a big splash, and then we never saw him again.
Yeah, he was probably just like touring or something.
Oh yeah, he's touring his one-man show.
Exactly. One thing I was thinking, you guys used to meet in the conference room, right?
Yeah.
I feel like that's another hot tip is like you guys used to take people away and invite them into this separate space. And then you pivoted because that like wasn't working.
It was another pivot based on need, which was go to them. It was like, quit trying to make them come into our world and our idea of how this workshop should be and be like, we're not getting enough people. People are bummed to be away from their friends by coming in this like separate room. And so let's just see if we can just embed ourselves with them and see how it goes. And that opened us up to other people that wouldn't have gotten wheeled into the conference room because because we were just around, and it'd be like, oh, because also new people would get sat sometimes at that table next to us, or the staff would be like, oh, the zine people, I'm going to actually introduce them to this person.
Yeah. And people love to say no to things. Like, I mean, if you think about it, like a lot of the folks at the Marie Smith Center didn't get to say no to much in their lives. And so often like turning down an activity was where they got some power back. And yeah. And honestly, sometimes, I mean, maybe this is a problem to say, but the people who don't want to be part of it are like secretly the most fun and, just like have the best stories or one-liners. Like I feel like Georgia really resisted being part of it because I don't think she ever really like understood what you were doing necessarily, or definitely not towards the end of her life. But she was incredible. I mean, she had the best one-line things to say all the time.
She was like, I need some graham crackers. My mouth is lonely. So she said, my mouth feels lonely. I need some graham crackers.
She told me one time, like, she said, I don't care what you want to be. If you want to be a drag nasty, you can be that too. And I was like, what's a drag nasty? And she was like, I don't know. Whatever comes up comes out. And I was like, oh, okay.
You got dropsy of the butt.
Dropsy of the butt. She had this one. I used to bring her bitch magazines. She really loved it. And one time, like, it was her birthday, and there was a musician who was playing for us, and he was playing Georgia on My Mind. And Georgia was sitting behind bitch. And I was like, hey, he's playing a song for you for your birthday. And she was like, I am aware. And I was like, did you want to, like, say thanks? And she was like, not particularly. And then I think she like put bitch down for 1 second and was like, okay, and then like put it back up. And I realized, like, I'm sure her whole life that song has been played at her and she's over it.
Different men being like, look, get it? It's your name. You're like, I got it.
Yeah, I'm aware. I don't need to respond to your acoustic guitar rendition of
I do feel like some of the activities people felt competitive with us, or would like kind of like, I would get annoyed. I mean, that's just my personality, is I would just get annoyed, but I'd be like, why did they just like pay so much attention to us? Or they would try to do their thing really bombastically and loudly, like louder than us, or get in our space.
People wanted to be in the zine, like staff wanted to be in the zine. It was constant. Yeah, absolutely.
That's it. One of my friends, because I do diary comics, and because people are always like, oh no, this isn't going in your comic, is it? And he was like, it's just like feeding stray cats. Like, once you put somebody in your diary comic, they're always gonna be coming around and being like, was that funny enough? But it's true. I mean, we did end up drawing staff, because it's also like you're in there and you're part of the organism, but you're also reporting on it. And the staff were a big part of that.
Mm-hmm.
Like the weirdos who worked there, including us, but just like the people that were like leading aerobics, the lady at the front desk. Also, by being in amongst the population, not in a side room, you're also getting some gossip at some point. You're observing gossip. Like when somebody gets a boyfriend and you're like, what are those people sitting together for? And people can be like, well, and I don't know if that's the purview of your zine, but for our zine, eventually we were like, we were getting into some of the gossip, whether just for us or for the publication.
Wow.
Oh, like there's Joanne who she was always trying to get up in the mix. I was like, get out of here.
Oh, one other thing. I think something powerful about this project is that also I just thought of this because Nicole showed like I think that was like a presidential race. And you get to be present with people through like huge crisis and political events that are crisis. And I like will always remember a page about like police brutality and like giving space for these Black elders to tell their stories about witnessing like death after death after death, and what that feels like to be a parent and a grandparent. And yeah, I think it's like a really good opportunity to get people's takes on things when they're not being asked, and giving space to process what's happening in the world.
I'm gonna screen share that comic just for I mean, yeah. Like Miss B getting to talk about the police and there being no justice. And I don't know if it's on here. Oh, there's when Lisa graduated.
I did not go to my graduation from grad school because I had to work, but we did have a graduation at the center for me.
Oh,
much better.
Sweet.
Oh, yeah. But then like one time, like Judy, I got to talk to her because there was a school shooting, and once I talked to the seniors, I realized they all had a plan. Like she had a plan for if an active shooter came into the senior center, which was like, I would tip over the table, hide behind it. People with wheelchairs, I would wheel them quickly to a different room and lock the door, get out if you can run, or I know some good places to hide here. Like these things that are in the news for everyone. And I mean, oh, and then also their take on the Golden Girls.
That's fantastic.
But also like the joy of getting to be there when Obama was elected president, and Miss B getting to be like, I didn't think I would live long enough to see this, and to see people just like well up, like Black elders who are like, holy shit, this is happening in my lifetime. This is so beautiful. That was really special.
Wow.
Giving you a lot of information, but it can be very easy.
Yeah, I guess I just really need to start with picking up the phone and connecting.
And really trust your gut with how it seems to work with the different activity coordinators.
I feel like you're going to get someone who's going to be super excited. Like, people want good, unique programming for their centers. It's hard. It is very easy to do the same 6 things at every single facility, whether it's residential or a day space. Like, and so someone's going to get it. They're going to like see your vision and be really excited to offer it to their folks. So, yeah.
Oh, right. You have to get a partner.
Yeah, find a partner.
I have someone in mind.
They don't have to be a zinester. Like Lisa, were you
Totally.
officially a zinester when you started volunteering with the group?
I mean, it's a little hurtful because I made Lisa's magazine, my original zine, at age 7. So
Would love to read it now.
Oh, I have copies. I'll send them to you.
Cool.
But it doesn't have to be somebody who's like, I'm making all these comics and all I do is zines. It can be someone who's just like trustworthy, consistent, interested.
Yeah. I feel like you saw that I was consistent and like did not want to be removed from that center. Like, the last day of my internship, I sobbed hysterically and literally came back on Monday to like be with the zine group, you know? So I think when you find that person, yeah, you're totally right. I wasn't going to draw any comics. I wasn't going to participate in that way, but like I wanted to be there and I wanted to ask questions and I wanted to be part of the conversation. And yeah, Nicole, you brought people in over the years, like whether it was someone you were dating or not, that did, like, I can think of one person in particular,
like Diane, who's in the book.
Somebody else too, who was different, was not just like, oh, this is kind of cool, this is like kind of cool and I'm gonna do this thing. And you know, I think, yeah, there are people that show that like light. I think some of us just like light up when we're around elders. I'm one of those people, and like find that person.
Yeah, or like Diane just liked elders, but also like eventually like wanted to be a nurse, so like had some kind of like caring thing about her. And she was not a zinester or anything, but she liked like a project. She liked hobbies. And so she came in and she totally did a bunch of the drawings that are in the book and had the neatest handwriting and loved talking to everybody and thought everybody was so funny and cool. And like would continue, like Miss B was asked, like one of our seniors was asking for Diane's phone number. It was a little bit of a miracle that we met Miss B, who was in the clique of cool women who we ended up embedding ourselves with. I should say that. Like making friends with the queen bee is where it's like helpful.
Yeah, find the most powerful person, win their trust,
ingratiate yourself to them.
Yeah, and they'll tell everybody else that it's good, because that's, yeah, she just told everyone else that they would be lucky to be part of it.
Oh, that's cool.
And then people saw us talking to her and she had cred. So then they would not mind if we were writing down something they were saying, or like they would talk to us a little bit. If I was like, what are you doing today, Aileen? You know, she'd be like, sweet gin. All right. Well, Jamie, if you have any other questions, you can email us.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for doing this. This is amazing. I took notes and I feel a lot more like empowered to get out there.
I mean, yeah, if you need to start with like a 1-day thing just to see how it goes, to get the feeling. Like if you need to start like a 1-day workshop about something just to like get the lay of the land, you also could do that before you jump in. We definitely took a tour of the center before we started, and I was like,
Oh, you took a tour? That's cool.
yeah, like we went to meet with them and we took a little tour. And I was weirded out because people were singing, "If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands." And I was like, is this what it's going to be?
Mhm.
And it wasn't.
Mhm.
And it wasn't.
There's always another layer of
Mhm.
stuff. Like I heard people like talking loud and patronizing people. I heard like slow-mo, "If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands," with people like asleep in their chair facing that person. And I was like, is this our work? Because I didn't know how to relate to senior citizens at all. I hadn't talked to any older people for a long time.
I have like I guess I do have some experience with you know, like I've worked in social work for about 7 years. So I have like some experience with that, but not actually too much with elders. So it'll be interesting. It'll be different, you know. Um yeah, I guess I need to kind of, you know, like you said, to throw expectations out the window and try to like be in the moment, be in the present, you know.
Just listen to what they need or what it seems like that you can even ask them.
Mhm.
Yeah. Cool.
All right, you guys, I'm recording this. I'll send you the recording if you want, if it'd be helpful for you for your notes. I would love to publish this somewhere, maybe the podcast or maybe like a blog or something so people can do it too.
Cool.
Yeah, if
Yeah, there's
anybody
so much.
watches this in Portland and wants to do it at the Hollywood Senior Center, now the Community for Positive Aging, come do it.
Yeah.
I'd love the Community for Positive Aging. Sounds like a place I want to go right now.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
Do they have an
That's
age
awesome.
limit?
No, we don't, like I said, we really don't like gatekeep much here. And it truly is just open 8:30 to 4:30, and people like come in and we'll spend the whole day here.
I'll be there.
We have Dough Donuts now. Dough Donuts is our new partner, and we get all of their end of day. We go pick them up.
That's vegan donuts, Jamie.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Great. Well, if you don't have an age limit, I'm just gonna sign myself in. Give me a fob. I'm just gonna be, I'm like, do you guys have a bid for me? Thank you very much. I love some of these donuts.
Perfect.
All right, everybody. Nice to see you.
Yeah, good luck, Jamie. Can't wait to see the outcome.